When your values are clear, your decisions are easy. As I evolve as a human, I want deeper relationships. I want relationships that challenge me intellectually, challenge my thoughts, get me reading more. I am definitely someone who's always seeking more knowledge, information, whether that's through podcasts. I'm pretty lucky to get to do an artistic thing in my life.
Welcome to the Midlife Chrysalis podcast with Chip Conley, where we explore how midlife isn't a crisis, but a chrysalis, a time of profound transformation that can lead to the most meaningful chapter of your life.
Hello, it's Chip Conley here at the Midlife Chrysalis, and I'm honored to have interviewed here at our Santa Fe campus, Scott Eastwood, the well-known actor who's acted in 40 different movies, the son of Clint Eastwood, and somebody who's become a friend of mine because he's building a home just down the beach from the MEA campus in Baja. I'm going to do a little bit longer intro for this one because I really, one of the things that Scott and I have bonded on is about our relationship with our fathers. Now, I will say that in the course of this interview, there were some limitations on what kinds of conversations I could have with him about his dad, who had recently turned 95 years old. But what I can say is that I want to tell you a little bit about my story of my father and why Scott and I tend to really have a kinship, because we both had, sort of hardcore fathers. My father's still living. He will turn 88 at the end of September. But my upbringing with my father was at times really challenging for me. I was the oldest son, the only son of three kids. Both of my parents are firstborn, and so I'm a firstborn of two firstborn. I was Stephen Townsend Conley Jr., a chip off the old block. So I was meant to be, as my dad said to me at a young age, "You're supposed to be a better version of me." Which was not hard, because there were times when I saw my dad, being a little bit aggressive. He had a bit of an Irish temper. Sometimes he drank a little too much. And so the idea of being a better version of dad felt good, except for I'm not my dad. And so to actually be in a situation where I could feel at a relatively young age that I was more of an introvert. My dad's an extreme extrovert. I became an extrovert over time, but I was a very extreme introvert as a kid. My dad was my baseball coach. I was a star pitcher because, of course, Dad wanted to make sure that I was, achieving beyond anybody else. My dad was an Eagle Scout, and he was our Boy Scout leader. I became an Eagle Scout, and my dad was always perching above me. My dad was, there's some kids, some adults who just think about their parents being absent. My parents were exactly the opposite. My parents were all involved in my life in every way. And I felt like I had a very narrow path. I went to the same high school as my father. I played water polo and swam like my father did. I was student body president of the high school, as my dad was in student government himself. I went to Stanford. Guess where my parents went to school? Stanford. I had a girlfriend in my first year of college for about a year and a half, Lynn, who I just loved, deeply loved her. My parents loved her. My parents met at Stanford. So guess what? The imprint of what Chip was supposed to do was upon me, in the sense that I was going to get married to Lynn. But something didn't feel quite right to me. And there was always this little lingering flavor of an emotion I had, frankly, for my best friend in high school, who actually joined me and played water polo with me first year at Stanford. And he went on to play in the Olympics. Long story short is, I had this experience of, at age 22, having to come out to my father as a gay man. My father was a Marine captain in the reserves. At one time, he was a very extreme conservative Republican. So the idea that his only son, the son who is named after him, the son who he had, done, the Pinewood Derby, building race cars with, the son who was supposed to actually be a better version of him, was so different than him, was really traumatic for my dad. And he actually hid it. He asked me to hide it from my mom for a couple of years. So it was just a little secret my dad and I had. And my dad wanted me to go to therapy, and I went to therapy, and I had a therapist who wanted to do reparative therapy with me, and that's a whole other story. I'm not going to get into that right now. But as I moved into my 20s and my father started to realize that, I was not moldable. I was no longer going to be Dad's version of Chip. I was going to be Chip's version of Chip. But as I said to my dad when he said, listen, my biggest fear is you're going to get AIDS, because I came out in 1983, which was, the summer, in fact, the summer of 83, it was when Newsweek for the first time put AIDS on its cover. And he was really worried that I was going to lose my ambition. That has not happened. And my dad said to me, I think you're going to become a florist or a hairdresser. And he didn't like that idea. And I said, Dad, I'm still ambitious. And by the way, I joined when I was at Stanford, I joined a fraternity just like my dad, but I didn't join his fraternity. Boy, was I a rebel. Long story short is, by the time I was in my mid-20s, it was clear that my father was still struggling with this. At this point, my mom knew about it. And I think they worried about my future. Will I find love in my life? I'll never have kids. The Conley name will not continue on because their only son will not have, children. As it turns out, everything changed. At 25 still, but on my 26th birthday, I finished a business plan to start this hotel company, Joie de Vivre. And my first hotel was the Phoenix, a rock and roll hotel that I was going to create in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. That became a very big success. My dad actually, to his credit, even though he thought it was a crazy idea, helped me to raise some money. He put $50,000 of his own money in it. My parents are not wealthy, but he also helped me raise some money from other people. So my dad was there for me. And he saw in my leadership and being the CEO of this company that ultimately grew to 3,500 employees, that the son that he wanted, this masculine, macho, John Wayne-like character, was not who I was, but that even so, I was a great leader, and that I had a creativity that was unleashed when I came out. The creativity to be able to have a design eye, to be empathetic, and to not actually feel nervous about actually showing some of my maybe more emotional or feminine side. And my dad is still here. He is still a deep part of my life. At the end of this talk today, after you hear Scott, I'm going to do an outro talking about a very pivotal time in my life, later in my life, in midlife, when my dad was there for me. I hope you'll enjoy this episode. You'll see that Scott is the legacy holder of his father's legacy. The fact that Scott has performed in 40 films, mostly Westerns and war movies, sort of like his father. Interestingly enough, the one time in my life I was lucky enough to go to the Academy Awards was 1991, the year that Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood's film, was won Best Picture. Having parents who are ever present, having to live up to parents' expectations, if any of that relates to you, I think you'll enjoy this episode with Scott and me. Scott.
Chip.
How are you?
I'm good.
So, Scott, you've actually, I said yesterday to you, because we were traveling from Baja up here to Santa Fe.
Yep.
And I thought like 30 plus films, but I did some research. It's like over 40 films. Mm-hmm. And you're only 39 years old. And you started when you were about 19 or 20 years old. So that's like 2 films a year.
Yeah.
That's incredibly prolific.
Well, I don't know about all that, but that's,
a lot.
It was busy.
Yeah.
Busy might be the better.
Which of the films are you most proud of? Which are the ones that you enjoyed the most?
Every experience is like a summer camp. Some are really fun and light, and you meet great people, and some are difficult and not such great people. And some are sort of in between. Some can be like the hardest films, ironically, end up being sometimes maybe the better product at the end of the day, but the experiences are the most important for me. And
what's it been like working with your dad? So your father is Clint Eastwood. The first and only time I've ever gone to the Academy Awards was when he won for Best Picture and Best Director for Unforgiven in 1991.
92.
92. Yeah. The film was in 91. I think the award was in 92. Yeah. He's been in 60 films or more, maybe. What's it been like to work with him?
Like any father-son relationship, I think working with your father can be great and can also be difficult. He was very old school in the way that he still is, in the way he is disciplined and the way he makes films. And I think he always held me to like the highest standard, right? So, but yeah, it's when I look at it like from a 30,000 foot level, I feel incredibly blessed to have been able to even just be exposed to film around him and learn about movie making and be inspired by it. So getting to go and work with him on film sets was always a great thing for me as a younger man.
So I grew up as Stephen Townsend Conley Jr., a chip off the old block. My dad wanted me to be a better version of him. And, my life at times has been the process of learning how to both stake out my own path,
Sure,
but also learn from my dad. How's that been for you? I mean, you're in the film business.
Yep.
You do a lot of things. You're an investor in a variety of businesses as well. How has that been, staking out your own path, relative to your dad? And has that been easy, hard? How are you wiser about that today at 39 than you were at 29?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's I'm an optimist. I look at the glass. I try to look at the glass half full always, and I'm like, the experiences that I've had gave me a lot of knowledge at an early age that people probably going into the film industry or wanting to be in the film industry didn't have. At the same time, people were like, well, you're just Clint Eastwood's son, and that's, I think people love to just sort of discount people. It's like, it's I don't know if it's like a human condition or, people wanting to like put other people down.
They call it Schadenfreude or something like that in German. It's it is a thing.
And so, you get that, and it's like the good with the bad, right? So, trying to overcome that and then go out and be my own man and, be in my own movies and make my own movies, produce my own movies, act in my own movies, and all those learning experiences that come along with it. But at the end of the day, I sort of like, I've always been pretty good at drowning out the noise. I don't know if that's just like an ignorance thing, and I'm just like, ignorance is bliss, whatever. I've always been pretty good at just being like, oh, that's, fuck them. Gotta just keep going.
Yeah.
So it's that for me has always been like my North Star. It's like, just keep your head down and work and don't complain. You're so lucky to just be on a path where you do what you want and you do what you like. You get up every day, and some parts of the business aren't great, but a lot of the parts of the business are really interesting when you get to make a product that people gravitate to. And I've always thought that's like I'm pretty lucky to get to do like an artistic thing in my life.
And breaking out of the stereotyping, it's easy as an actor to get stereotyped as like, oh, you do war movies or you do westerns or you do whatever. But it feels like some of the films that you've been working on lately, and some of the films you've done historically, romantic comedies, and you're opening up new doors and becoming a beginner in some new genres. What are you most excited about these days in terms of the films that you've been working on?
So I have a bunch of films that haven't been released that all have been very, very different experiences. Big action movies, sort of a survival movie. I just did another, call it romantic comedy type of film. It was a Colleen Hoover film. Like for me, it's always great to, I don't want to get bored. And so if I just did something like that, then I'm like, well, I just kind of did that. I just did that material. So let's look for something else. And so it's not like there's no grand design. It's more just what is available and what sort of, what you're reading and what you're gravitating to. I have a film that Luke Wilson and I are putting together right now, and that we're hopefully be shooting in September down in Mexico.
And just so everybody knows, Scott lives down the beach or is building a home
Yes.
with our same contractor
Yep.
down the beach from where we live and the MEA campus in Pescadero. Oh, I'm telling everybody that. Oh no, you're going to have all of your groupies showing up in Pescadero.
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay.
They'll probably be attending some of your MEA.
They'll come to MEA, yes.
So that was an MEA plug.
Yes.
Sure.
This film is going to be shot in Mexico.
Yeah.
And you're excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's a film that reminds me of, films of like the late 90s or early 2000s. Movies like Major League or I don't know, Bull Durham or just movies that were
baseball movies.
Baseball movies,
Yeah,
guy movies.
Yeah,
maybe
guy
not,
movie.
Yeah, maybe not so politically correct.
Yeah. So let's dive into that for a minute. So because a lot of the films you've done and a lot of the films your father has done have had a very strong masculine element to it. But actually, what's been interesting about some of your films as well as your dad's films is often it's sort of looking at the hero mythology and saying, is that true? Right? I mean, Unforgiven was sort of, with your dad, it was like that. And Flags of Our Fathers, which was a film you did with your dad 20 years ago. It was about like the mythology of Iwo Jima and the flag that was being hoisted and the story behind it. And so where's your mind in terms of the idea of masculinity in the modern culture, especially with men, so much evidence that younger men are struggling relative to younger women as they go into adulthood in university settings, in earnings, etc.
Yeah, we touched, you asked a couple different questions, so I'll start with the first one. And I think, my father's films have always examined, at least in the later years, they examined, the complexities of the character or the human behind a very like machismo man, right? Like we're a lot of different shades of gray in this life. And a lot of times that machismo, it has another side of it too. Like you're dealing with regret and all the things that humans deal with. And that's, Unforgiven sort of was like the culmination of that, right? It's like this mythology behind all that was a life of like, hey, this is what I fucked up on.
Yeah.
And dealing with that. And I always find that to be the most interesting when it comes to like complex characters, because nobody is one thing. And when you kind of like now put it through the lens of like, what is it to be a man? I think it's very complex. I think it's like just anything. It's like there's no one way. It's like both things can be true.
How would you say you are evolving as a man? Say compared to your early 20s. Like how would you say that you're wiser as a human, but also as a man today?
Yeah. Like in your 20s, you don't know anything. You're running and gunning, and you've probably been affected by culture and whatever how you're raised, and then you're trying to figure that out. I think for young men, I think we're dealing with like a lot of like testosterone, a lot of fight or flight sort of, responses to life scenarios. And as you kind of age and get a little wiser and you realize there's different ways to handle these situations. I think it gives you like a certain power as well to know that you can handle life situations with complexity.
It is interesting. As we get older, we are less emotionally reactive, although there are examples out there who don't fit this profile. But on average, our emotional intelligence grows.
Sure.
As you're 39, you're turning 40 later
March.
This year.
In March, March.
Or
next year.
Early next year.
Yeah.
So you're sort of at that dawning of midlife. How do you see midlife? Like, what is your perspective on this is called the Midlife Chrysalis, partly because we're trying to remake the myth of the midlife crisis.
Yeah.
The idea that maybe we're supposed to learn some things,
Mm.
and it's not about a crisis that, your world falls apart.
Sure.
Maybe it does fall apart in certain ways, but actually on the other side of that breakdown is a breakthrough. So how do you see midlife, especially as an actor?
I like that you're aging me right to my death at 80. so I like that you've calculated that my midlife is 40.
No. Midlife lasts like four
decades. Right?
4 decades.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's probably from 35 to 75.
Sure.
That's my opinion.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you said it sort of well there. I mean, one door closes, another opens. But yeah, sort of I find myself this year specifically, for a lot of reasons, kind of taking a step back in the film industry and taking a step back in like trying to figure out what is my next decade or two look like? What does that look like? So I find myself like asking myself those questions sort of on a daily. And I think if you're not, you could find yourself sleepwalking through your, 40s and 50s and wake up and be like, well, I'm not doing what I want to do, or, I'm doing what someone else told me I'm supposed to do. So I'm trying to sort of like take a 30,000 foot level of like where I've been and where I want to go.
Yeah. And this is, one of the classic questions of midlife is, am I living my own life, or am I living someone else's success script that I have been reading, to use a little bit of acting metaphor. And, if you were to dream about something else you could do, like, let's get crazy for a moment. Let's say you were not in the film business. Let's say you were doing something completely different and you went to an MEA workshop. And at the end of the MEA workshop, you said like, okay, I'm supposed to be a pastry chef, or okay, I'm supposed to be a firefighter, or okay, I'm supposed to be what might be something that you might find fascinating, maybe even from childhood, that you could resurrect. Like for me, we've been talking about the film festival, the MEA Film Festival, and you've seen how passionate I am about it, and I think back to when I was younger. I wrote a screenplay in my early 20s. I loved going to movies. I used to be a pretend movie critic when I was 12 years old, and so what might that be for you?
If I got to bring it back to my 12-year-old self, I had this. And I'm not sure where it came from because my mom was confused about it, but I had this desire to design houses where I would draw floor plans as a 12-year-old kid who's drawing like floor plans, like kitchen floor plans and layouts for houses. I spent a lot of time in Hawaii growing up, being in real nature and in warm weather. It still has I still have like a calling for it. So
that's that humidity thing. We were talking about humidity earlier today. And Maddie, your partner, and I was like, humidity can sometimes be a pain. And you're like, no, I love humidity. But that's, Hawaii has some humidity.
Hawaii, yeah. Any of the, tropical islands, anywhere in the South Pacific. I think if I'm looking at this next thing and what would be like fill my soul, it's something in the tropics, something adventure, maybe taking people on tours or doing something adventure and showing people under the stars at night on a catamaran. I mean, this is kind of what I sort of see. I don't know what that is exactly, but yeah.
Your father's 95 years old. If you were to live till that age or longer, how would you see your life evolving in your 40s and 50s and 60s and beyond? I mean, he moved from acting into directing and producing. You've done some producing. I don't know that you've done any directing yet. Is that something you'd like to do? And what, you've said both to me personally as well as in the press Like films are a director's medium.
Yeah, they really are.
Because they really control things, which can be hard because sometimes a film comes out and you're like, oh my God, there was so much good stuff that never made it into the final cut. Is directing something that you would see yourself potentially doing as you get older?
Yeah.
Because in some ways, you could see a director having wisdom that you build over time.
Before as my dad would say, before I hang up my spurs, I'll definitely give it a shot. Directing, it really is. Film is a director's medium. The director is really making all the decisions. They're, it's a collaboration, but they're hiring the departments, right? They're the CEO. Mm-hmm. So they're hiring the departments and then directing those departments accordingly. Set direction, locations, saying, no, I want something more grand. I want something with bigger vistas. I want something that feels older, make it this, make it that, the wardrobe, all the departments, all those decisions from the pre-production of a film all the way to its completion and its post-production. Mm-hmm. It's all director driven. Mm-hmm. And I like that because it's the whole process. Every decision is a creative decision you're making for better or worse. But I don't think I would want to just sort of stay in the current position where I'm just an actor for hire and not. I'd rather fail on my own terms, Mm-hmm. I'd rather go out there and take some swings than just, because sometimes you get on a film and you go, okay, I would not be doing it like this. Mm-hmm. You've been around enough, you could go, I've seen it done this way, mm-hmm. and I've seen it done this way, and I know that way is not going to work or not going to look good. And then you're like, but I don't really have a lot to say here. The train's already left the station. So you're kind of going, it starts to chip away at you a little bit and go, I'm gonna give this a shot on my own.
How soon?
Soon. I gotta find the problem is you gotta find the right material. And I don't like to write. I like the collaboration of reading something and giving notes and having an idea and having other people write it. Mm-hmm. But this right here is really tough. My hat goes off to the writers that do it well, because it's a hard thing to lock yourself in a room and be isolated and put pen to paper.
So I want to explore this idea of time. And as we get older, time becomes more valuable. Maybe we talked about regret earlier. Maybe we might actually think about the things that we wish we had done. One of the questions we like to ask at MEA is 10 years from now, what will you regret if you don't learn it or do it now? For you, because anticipated regret, the thing of okay, at 49, I will regret that I didn't do or learn this in my 40s. What comes up for you when you think that? Because for me, I'll just
sure.
When I moved to Baja, where you'll be living soon enough, part-time, I had a mindset at age 56 that I was too old to learn to surf, and I was too old to learn Spanish. But when I put it in this framework of 10 years from now, what will I regret if I don't learn it or do it now? Knowing that I might still live part-time in Mexico at 66 near a couple surf breaks.
Yep.
And also, a place where everybody's speaking Spanish. It gave me the catalyst to say, I got to learn Spanish. I got to learn to surf.
Yep.
Now, I'm not very good at either, but it actually got me off my duff.
Yeah.
So what might you regret if you don't learn it or do it now, or at least sometime in the next 10 years?
I feel like I've accomplished a lot of, the sort of action sports things physically, a lot of physical things that I've wanted to do. Learned how to spearfish and jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and surfing. And even though I am still a beginner at certain things, which I love being a beginner, like I started foiling last year and that became, sort of, now I'm a beginner at that. And then I started trying to do like wing foiling, which is sailing and foiling at the same time. I feel like a lot of like physical stuff I've done. I think what I want more now is more intellectual stimulation. So
that's why you're hanging out with me.
Yeah. No, I mean, it really is. I mean, as I evolve as a human, I want deeper relationships. I want relationships that challenge me intellectually, challenge my thoughts, get me reading more, get me interested. I am definitely someone who's always like seeking more knowledge, information, whether that's through podcasts or books on tape. I also think this is broad, but if I don't follow my gut on in 10 years from now, I think I'm going to be upset with myself.
Yeah.
So whether that's, hey, I got to give this directing thing a shot, or hey, I got to do this, or I've got to, you got to follow my gut. When you don't follow your gut, that's when you really get upset with yourself.
And that's a lesson you learned from your dad.
Yeah.
Because isn't that one of his key lessons he's taught you?
Just follow your gut.
Yeah.
Anytime I've said yes to a job and I've kind of known it's not the right thing, it's not the right deal, I've done it for money, or I've done it for other reasons, or as my agents or whatever saying, oh, you got to do it, you got to do this, it's great, it's good for your career, blah, 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 blah. Whatever is that other voice, if you listen to that other voice and you don't listen to your gut, it usually steers you wrong. And then you're upset. The only person you can be upset with is yourself. So I think just listening to my gut, is the biggest thing.
So longevity's become a hot topic. Everybody's
a lot of experts out there.
A lot of experts out there. A lot of people trying different things. And one of the things I've never done is something you did when you had a broken ankle and you were filming The Outpost, a film that was very highly regarded about Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan, and a particular battle that happened there. So you ended up in a hyperbaric chamber to actually speed the healing of this ankle. But tell us a little bit about that movie, because it's actually one of my favorite movies of yours, and one of the highest rated movies of yours. What happened? How'd you break your ankle, if you want to talk about that?
Sure.
And what was that movie like? And how do you think about your own longevity?
So I actually, this was, I think it was in 2018 or 19. I was set to start filming The Outpost in Bulgaria, which we were dubbing for Afghanistan. And it was about 6 weeks out from shooting, and I broke my ankle. And I called the director and the producer, give them this news. But I told them, the doctor says, it was a little bit of a white lie. The doctor says that I'll be ready in 3 to 4 weeks. Fine. It's good to go. Which I knew really wasn't the case, because anyone who knows who ever broken a bone, it's like 6 weeks off of it, and then you have to sort of do the rehab. But I was very determined to do it, and they sort of stuck with me, which I was surprised. I said, well, someone else will go make that movie. So I did everything you could possibly do. I was in the hyperbaric chamber every day or every other day. I started doing physical therapy before the doctors told me to do it. I'm under the belief that you want to keep it, you got to keep it isolated, but for a while, but then you need to start moving it. And I ultimately started that movie in a cast, because I got there and I wasn't really ready to be running.
Because it's a very physical movie.
It's a very physical movie.
Yeah.
So I started in a cast, and this wasn't really Rod Laurie, who was our director. It wasn't his dream, because I know he had some oneers that were that he had designed for the film.
What's a oneer?
A oneer is when you shoot a scene in one shot. So the camera might move around and go back and forth to different actors, but you're not setting up different setups.
Sort of like Adolescence.
Sort of like Adolescence.
Which I believe.
You believe, and I think it's bullshit. I think they did like 4 oneers and they stitched them together.
Okay, all right.
But that's where I'll die. I guess I'll die on that hill.
Okay.
But yeah, so they had to sort of design some shots for the first week or two around me. And then I was doing so much physical therapy, and I was so determined to like get going that by, week 3, I was pretty much running. But yeah, it was a tough tough moment. It was a moment that really, like, you put your mortality a little bit, because I hadn't really broken a bone since I was, 15, 20 years prior to that. When anyone who knows who's ever been injured, it's a mental, like it takes you, especially someone like me who's so physical and like part of my daily routine or part of just my life is like all these physical hobbies. So when you're mandated to not be able to move, I mean, it's rough mentally. I think that, it always gets you thinking about, okay, like life's pretty fragile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite longevity hack? I mean, from a wellness perspective,
Yeah.
what do you really focus on?
And I'm not an expert,
Yeah.
by the way, because I sort of despise all these health experts.
Yeah.
Because most of them are schlepping something.
Yeah.
And that really bums me out because, I want people to learn about health and wellness without having to be sold something. And I think there's so much you can do without taking anything, just the basics, the fundamentals, right? Working out, stretching, sleep, mental, spiritual.
Health, nutrition.
Eating, nutrition. There's so much that...
Social.
Yes, community. There's so much in just the foundation that you don't need to buy a product and you don't need a guru to tell you about. But the foundation for me, you asked the question, is the foundation for me is some sort of yoga daily, whether that's 15, 20 minutes in the morning or prior to a workout, stay hydrated, eat whole foods, and try to get to bed early, try to stay off any devices, try to get your circadian rhythm in a good clock where when the sun sort of goes down, you're sort of going down.
Yep.
So that's sleep. And then some sort of spiritual component, if you can. And a communal component, because I think communities, you sort of look at they talk about the blue zones, right?
Yeah,
right.
no.
These are sort of the fundamentals. They all tick into those categories. They're eating whole foods. They're active. They have a communal. They have a spiritual aspect, and that I just try to sort of like look at holistically.
You are wiser today than you were 5 or 10 years ago. Sometimes what we consider common sense is through the school of hard knocks. Since this podcast is called the Midlife Chrysalis, and you're early in midlife.
I'm early,
so
don't count me out yet.
Let's say any time in adulthood, from age 18 on, what's a challenge you went through that may have kicked your butt for a while, and you learned something from it? You got wiser. If our painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom, what's an experience you had that kicked your ass, but you're happy it happened at the end of the day? Because if you're not happy, but you're happy with the way you metabolized it,
sure,
and learned from it.
I think in my early 20s, I was so focused on trying to create a business, be successful, which there were things I started and failed at. I tried to launch a whiskey company. I tried to do a couple variety of different businesses as I was, working as a bartender and a valet car parker. And as a young man, I felt so trying to do something, but not understanding. And if it didn't work, and trying to control it. And you can't control life. Like there's sort of you have to let go. You can work hard. You can put your head down. It may work out. It may not. Usually hard work sort of trumps everything.
Yeah.
You will get successful if you work hard at anything.
It's a strange dichotomy. Sometimes you just have to push harder, and sometimes you have to let go. And that's why the serenity prayer is so powerful. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
To change the things I can.
That change the things I can. Right. And the wisdom.
To know the difference.
Know the difference. So it's really, it's the serenity prayer, but it's also the wisdom prayer.
Yeah.
It's really about understanding. Wisdom is really about understanding what are the things you can control or influence, and what are the things you have to let go.
Yeah.
And, that is, to me, like the ultimate, learning when to surrender.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's still hard. It's still a thing. You got to go,
Yeah.
wait, bro.
Yeah. You don't know, but like, am I supposed to let this go? Am I supposed to just push harder? This is where friends are helpful. Family members are helpful to like be the objective one, giving you some indication. So how would you like people to use, what words would you like people to use to describe you? Like what adjectives today in terms of who you are on a good day?
I guess one of the mantras I try to live by, I don't know if I want, it's hard like wanting my friends to describe me in a certain way, because I guess that feels slightly narcissistic or.
No, this isn't meant to be narcissistic. They first of all, let's just say they will be describing you in a certain way.
And one day.
They always do.
Yeah.
I mean, people talk about it. Companies have a brand and we have a reputation. And
sure. Yeah.
So especially if you're a high profile person out in the public, people will say, "Oh, he is."
Sure.
And they'll describe you as 1, 2, 3 different adjectives.
I guess it reminds me of I think it was a poem that my mom read me when I was a young man, and it's sort of like life isn't about the material things. Mm-hmm. It's not about what clothes you have or who your friends are or aren't, but it's about how you affect people on this planet in your time here in either a positive or a negative way. And that really could never have occurred alone. Mm. And that has stuck with me. So I hope that I have affected more people positively, and they, given them, inspired them, or, been kind to them or been graceful in my time here before we're dust and bones. And that's kind of, I guess, if like I was to distill it down, that's what.
And if you have one lesson you've learned from your mom and one from your dad, what might those be?
That was definitely from my mom, because she is
still living. Yeah,
she is. Yeah. And she was real soulful in that way, and I love that, because it's so easy to get caught up in, in what you think is important. And none of that stuff. I remember when my buddy died, he passed away, and we went, and he was a very successful guy. And we went to like box up his stuff at his house and help out and do the stuff and like sort of clean up, and like you have to do all these things, and you realize like none of this shit matters. It just matters. Like the jeans and the things and stuff. It's like, you need a certain amount of that. It's nice to have a sweater on a cold day. It's like none of this stuff that I, at one point in time, it's like, oh, that's so cool to, have or whatever. And then you realize it doesn't matter, because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And so, I don't know. Those were lessons. I don't know necessarily if it was my mom or my dad or combination of both. My dad was, I always got to give it to my dad for giving me like hard work and discipline, work ethic. And at times very tough lessons, because he was so old school. Like, you're on your own, figure it out. Like you got to go make it as a man in this world. Like, I'm not here to help you. You got to go, you got bills to pay, you got stuff, and that, I think that's is an important part of being a young man and trying to like figure it out and, scratch and claw and learn the value for $1.
Have you had any mentors in the film industry that you can look to and just say like, I admire, even if you don't know the person,
sure,
I admire them because fill in the blank.
Yeah. I mean, I've had different mentors through the years, older friends, sort of like 10 to 20 year, my seniors, through my life that have always been a good, like, a good person to give a call to and say, hey, I'm going through this, or I'm trying to make this decision. And I think that's really important, right? Like having a mentor and eventually having a mentor and eventually becoming a mentor, because you want to pay that forward, right?
Yeah.
And so I've done some of that. I've taken a lot of meetings with younger people who want to be actors or whatever, want to, advice about the film industry. And I'm always like, my door's always open for that.
Okay. So let's say someone 10, 15 years younger than you comes to you, Scott, and says, Scott, can we have coffee next week?
Yeah.
I know how much you like coffee, Scott. So what if we have coffee next week? And I want you to come to the meeting with one wisdom bumper sticker, something you've learned, Scott, at 39 that has had a profound impact on you. What's the bumper sticker, the wisdom bumper sticker that has your fingerprints all over it? And what's the origin story that led to that wisdom? Because again, our painful life lessons are often the raw material for our future wisdom.
Sure.
So what might be, and it's a hard question.
No, I actually, I know the bumper sticker
Yeah.
because I think about it often when I'm making decisions. When your values are clear, your decisions are easy. And I think that wraps up if, you kind of go back to that when you're, because decisions are tough. Decisions are some of the toughest things you're going to do in life because you wrestle over them. Once you sort of make a decision, then you start on that path. But I think, the clearer you can really know what your values are, then the clearer and easier it is to go, nope, that's not in my value set. And I'm not going to sacrifice my principles because of money or because of a thing that someone else is telling me to do.
And did you learn a lesson from the past based upon that?
Oh man, probably 1,000, but I actually randomly, I heard it from an agent. And I always thought it was quite profound coming from an agent, where sometimes they're not as profound as you want them to be. But yeah, I thought it was really profound. And it's just the older I get, the easier it is to just put that in perspective and that be the North Star.
Off the top of your head, what might be some of those values today?
Integrity, honesty. When you say you're going to be somewhere or do something, you got to follow through with it. When you make an agreement with someone, it doesn't need to be done by a lawyer. It needs to be look someone in the eye and shake their hands, and you say you're going to do something. I mean, that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
There's a great book called The Code of the West. And if everyone should buy this book because it's the simple principles that make us inherently good to each other as a community. A lot of these principles you find in religious texts, but a lot of them are just very, regardless of what religion you are or not, they are principles that are just guiding principles. And that's something my dad was very he was very vocal about. Like you say you're going to do something, you do it. You follow through with your commitments. If you set out to do something, whether it be the plumber or a carpenter or whatever, you go out and be the best version of that. You don't mail it in. You do it once, do it right. Do it with some pride. Have some pride of your ownership, whatever you're creating. Those are sort of them, and there's some more, I'm sure.
No, I feel your passion on this. So,
also, it's a thing for me. It's like I think that is one of my passions I see in like pop culture, where I don't see that. I don't see voices saying, "Be someone of integrity." You don't, like we live in this like litigious society, and a society where it becomes about culture and money and fast cars,
Instagram,
and you got to have this to be successful and happy. And it's like, I don't see people pushing that narrative. Like, like, you know what? Do something of value that makes you feel happy and be an person with integrity. Because I think that, I don't know, but in my opinion, that narrative and those values will find you in a place where you're a lot more happy.
And you'll be passing those values on to your
to
kids, your mentees, your, the people who follow you. So thank you very much, Scott. It is an honor for us to have this conversation.
Yeah, and it's an honor to be here. It's great to see the ranch.
Scott got to stay at both of my houses, the house in Baja before we came up here, and then the house here. And I really appreciate that our friendship is just continuing to grow.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to actually give some context at the end of this episode to my relationship with my dad again. Because when I talked with Scott, and there are a couple things that came up with Scott after we finished the episode, cutting and recording it, that I wish I could have included. Number one is that, how much Scott loves his father, how dedicated he is to his dad at this age in his life. And just to see his dad as a role model for aging in his mid-90s. But his dad's pretty much like, okay, there's one way to do things. His dad's an extreme introvert. So at times Scott has had to find his own path, like I did, in terms of like Scott's a bit of an extrovert. And additionally, one of the things that came up in my conversation after the recording was that Scott had a near-death experience, not quite like mine. I'll tell you about it for a second, and then I have a story for you that includes my dad. When Scott was in a war movie, I can't remember which one it was, but he was in a helicopter on a hill, and the helicopter was coming down and landing on a hill. It was a tough landing. By the way, both Clint and Scott know how to fly helicopters. And when it came down, and then Scott was supposed to get out of the helicopter lurched such that while the helicopter whirls were happening, they almost cut his head off. It was within just a couple feet of actually missing his head. And this is as the helicopter sort of lurched down the hill. So he didn't go unconscious, but he could not be filming anything anymore that day because he was so shaken by it. So I want to just tell you a story that I haven't told on this podcast yet. And people have said to me, Chip, we love the podcast. We love what you're doing. We want more of your stories. So I'm going to just give you one of my personal stories that's a near-death experience that includes my dad. I'll just say that I've spent my life running. I have, in sixth grade, as an elementary school student, there was one point where lunch was over and I was doing laps running around the playground, and I couldn't stop. I literally couldn't stop. And it was just a mental thing. And so finally, Mrs. Epperson, my sixth grade teacher, came out, pulled me by the ear and said, "You're supposed to be in the classroom." But I've had a thing about outrunning fears and maybe not feeling good enough, being an admiration and achievement addict, partly because of my fear of disappointing my dad. I became a big success in the hotel industry. But in my late 40s, everything started to fall apart. And this was my midlife chrysalis. I've talked a little bit about this on the podcast before. And I was trying to outrun my emotions again. I had a life that was a bit overstuffed in plot. And I just needed to figure out how to unstuff my full life, which didn't feel like a very happy life. I had a friend named Chip, not me. This is not me talking about myself. His name is Chip Hankins. He was my insurance broker. He was one of my closest friends. He's somebody I really looked to for spiritual advice and guidance. By his mid-40s, my friend Chip had married 5 different people as the officiant in the wedding. And so he's a very well-loved guy. He was married, had 2 kids, lived part-time in New Zealand, where his wife was from, and part-time in the San Francisco Bay Area. So on April 30th, 2008, I was in St. Louis about to give a speech to 1,000 people. And 5 minutes before I was going on stage, I got a call from Chip's boss, the president of the insurance brokerage, telling me that Chip had taken his own life, which was so hard to hear. I ultimately I lost 5 male friends to suicide, ages 42 to 52, between 2008 and 2010. So long story short is I took note. I had to go up on stage, give my speech. And then afterwards, I just like, wow, this was such a surprise. I would have guessed that Chip was in that kind of trauma. And he had a lot going on in his life. A month later, this happened in New Zealand. A month later, we had the memorial service for Chip. And to have everybody go up on stage and give their Chip stories, while I was going through a really hard time during that time, I had some suicide ideation myself. I wanted to escape. I had a long-term relationship that was probably ending not by my choice. I had a foster son who was an adult who was going to prison wrongfully. I didn't want to be CEO of the company I'd started, more than 20 years earlier, and we were running out of cash during the Great Recession. So here, everybody was coming up and giving their chip stories at the memorial, and I was like, oh God, it's like being at your own funeral. And then a month later, I broke my ankle playing baseball at Gavin Newsom's bachelor party for his second wedding. I got a cut on my leg, didn't realize I had fertilizer from the baseball field on my leg. And I ended up going septic on my leg over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks. Finally got to a strong antibiotic that seemed like it was working. And then, of course, I should have stayed home. But being the runner, I got to go do this. I got to go do that. I ended up on the road giving a speech in St. Louis, no less, where I had heard about Chip just a few months earlier. I'm in St. Louis now giving a speech. And while giving a speech on crutches, on an antibiotic, when I sat down to sign books, I went unconscious. They put me on the ground, and the paramedic showed up a few minutes later, and I went flatline. I died. So I had a near-death experience. I literally went to the other side 9 times over 90 minutes. People ask all the time, what did you see on the other side? I was like, I saw birds. Birds were talking to me. I mean, it's a longer story, but I'll keep it brief right now and just say, I'm sitting here right now in the recording studio listening to birds outside. When I hear birds, when I was in this flatline experience, I could understand what they were saying to each other and to me. And they were telling me to slow down and see the beauty and awe. So ultimately I lived, of course. And on the other side of that, it allowed me to change everything. Relationship ended, got my adult foster son, Damien, out of prison and sold the company. But it was my father who showed up in the hospital when they had no idea what was wrong with me. They didn't realize it was an allergic reaction to my antibiotic. But they thought, it might be something more serious. He showed up and he was there for me. And I loved him and he loved me. And he just told me he told me so many times how much he loved me. My father at age 47, I was at 47. He was at that point 69. He was just telling me how much he loved me because he didn't know if I was going to continue to live. I tried to convince my dad, okay, I'm here in St. Louis. I'm supposed to go to Toronto for a speech in Toronto. And then I'm supposed to go to Houston. And my dad said, well, you're not going to Toronto because you're going to be in the hospital. So we have to cancel that. But I hear how much you want to be in Houston. You want to speak to these 100 entrepreneurs about what it means to be an entrepreneur, because this is actually what you want to do next. He heard me talking previous to my flatline experience about the fact that I didn't really want to be running my company anymore. And then I have this flatline experience and he is there to see, as he said to me on the flight back from Houston, after I addressed these entrepreneurs and did a little workshop for them for 4 hours, he was in the back of the room watching me to make sure I didn't die on stage. He said, Chip, I came here wanting to make sure you didn't die. I have seen now how you want to live. We need to figure out how to get you out of this straitjacket of this company that you started, this Frankenstein that at this point you have outgrown, so that you can do the thing you're supposed to do, which is to write books, be a speaker, and explore, what's next for yourself after age 50. So for the next 2 years, my father, who I had that very difficult relationship with when I was younger and in my early 20s, when he sort of disavowed me for who I was, my father was there for me in my time of need. And quite frankly, in many ways, my father was the one who helped me to have the courage to actually let go of this identity of the CEO and founder of the second largest boutique hotel company in the US, an achievement that in many ways defined who I thought I was. And of course, I went into my 50s and had the time of my life and loved my 50s, had time to figure out what was next, and then Airbnb and then MEA. So I just want to finish by saying, I wish this was playing on Father's Day, because I just want to say thanks to Dad. Just as Scott has had a challenging relationship, but a loving relationship with his dad, I've had the same. But over time, I have found that he's become one of my best friends. Hope you enjoyed this episode and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Midlife Chrysalis. This show is produced by Midlife Media. If you enjoyed this episode, help us spread the word by subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite platform.